We talked about him and the pressure he's under. I want to talk about his players maybe letting him down, focusing on some Germans. Now, the irony being is Robert Huth is a German, but he never played in Germany, whereas Mark Schwarzer, who has German heritage, did play in Germany. So I know both of you keep a close eye on the Bundesliga over the last few years at least. Let's talk firstly about Kai Havertz. Well, it's one goal. Has he done enough, Mark?
No, absolutely not. You know what? I've done a lot of work on the Bundesliga in the last couple of years, and I've seen him play a lot of times for Leverkusen. When Julian Brandt was there a couple of seasons ago, he was that player like he's kind of seen at the moment. Other than he came into games, he floated in and out of games. He did have some sort of key moments in game that he would score a great goal or do something special. He's not even doing that at the moment, but. Then Julian Brandt left and went to Dortmund, and then Kai Havertz was the main man at Leverkusen last season, and he actually came out of himself a little bit more, and he dominated games more for longer periods of time, and that was something that I was going to find really interesting to see how he would adapt when he came to Chelsea. And I get the feeling that he needs to be that sort of centre focal point, focal player. He needs to be almost like the biggest star player. Almost everything needs to go through him. That's not happening at Chelsea. So he's not even in the game for most of the time. Tonight, he was hardly in the game at all.
Do you not think he needs to make that himself then? Do you know, like, it's all well and good and saying, you know, he needs to be the main guy, but, you know, he's at a big club. He needs to make that happen himself, doesn't it? You know, it's not the case of, you know, he needs to get out of the team for me to perform. You know, now it's time to shine. You know, the Chelsea, you invested huge amounts of money in him. I just don't like his body language at all. He looks a bit lightweight. Obviously still young and too harsh, I mean, because it's his first year, but do you know what I mean? Like it's, you know, he just looks like not bothered at times, you know, when he loses the ball or gives it away or doesn't run back as much. So it's difficult to understand.
That's something that's not changed. So there are times at Leverkusen where he did shine, but only for moments. And then he'd sort of go missing again. And I don't think he was ever really held accountable for it because he sort of came through, broke through into the team at Leverkusen. It wasn't the huge expectation on his shoulders like you have now at Chelsea. So it's a completely new experience for him, a new situation that he finds himself in. And this will be the making or the breaking of it in terms of, does he go up to that next level now? Or does he kind of almost succumb to the pressure, not able to deliver on this level, this stage, week in, week out, for more than snippets of the games, more than moments of games. And that's going to be his big challenge. And that was always my big question when Chelsea were looking to buy him and the money that they spent on him. Is he going to be the player that's able to deliver for more often than not in a game rather than just dipping in and out?
Huth?
Well, clearly it's not at the moment. It's just, I mean, it is a difficult time to come here with no fans and, you know, difficult situation, but you just want to shake him, don't you? If he was in my changing room and he just, I mean, we used to have Mahrez in our changing room got a lot better, you know, but the team sort of took care of him as well, as much, you know, of saying, you can't just do the one side of it or just 10 minutes after the game. You know, you just really need to shake him. And maybe Chelsea lacked that sort of internal leader or leaders where that conversation happens, you know, because it's not always a nice conversation to have when you're not performing well, but that needs to also happen, you know, and that's where you put the emphasis on him. Because you need someone to tell him what it takes to play in the Premier League. You know, it's not good flicking the ball around the corner, you know, every 10 minutes. You know, you need to do it every minute of every game. It's really simple. And maybe that's just what's lacking there. Maybe the whole change room was a little bit too nice. You know, I didn't see anyone today flying around, you know, getting angry, you know, challenging each other to get more out of each other. I was really surprised not to see any of that.
Lack of leadership?
Yeah, I mean, you can always play the manager for sure, and we talk about Lampard now, but the best changing rooms I've been in is where the players took charge of themselves. You know, took the responsibility, took ownership. You know, sometimes you have a good game, sometimes a bad game, but what you don't do is you go around blaming people. You know, you don't go, oh, you know, he's playing this, he's doing this. That's where it gets a bit sort of mixed up in the messages. But certainly we at Leicester, when Mark and I were there, we had a really good change room. And when we lost, there wasn't a look to blame anyone or blame the manager or blame whoever. It was sort of have that hard old look in the mirror and, be honest with yourself. Can you do more? Frank alluded to it, saying Leicester were sharper today. That's for me is just an attitude thing, I think.
The thing at Leicester as well, back to that, is that everybody knew what they were doing. So whether it was Mark Albrighton down the left-hand side or whether it was Jamie Vardy through the middle, of course, Riyad Mahrez, whether they swapped Mark Albrighton and Riyad Mahrez, they'd swap. You just knew what you were going to get from all the time. Riyad probably slightly a bit different, but, he was either going to come in, look to play that wall pass or not. Whereas Chelsea, you think about it, I mean, you've got Kai Havertz, Timo Werner and Ziyech, 3 completely new players that have never played together before. Obviously, Havertz and Werner have played in the national team together, but again, slightly different. There's not necessarily that natural sort of combination there. There's not a natural understanding. I wonder how much pattern play they actually do going forward. To me, it looks like at the moment there are too many players that don't really. They play a similar way. There's no one really either sticking the ball out wide, getting the ball wide at the feet, taking a player on, getting past them and whipping that ball into that near post or the far post. Chelsea are just not making those runs at the moment. There just doesn't seem to be any patterns of play going forward.
So what do you make of what you said in terms of they were just not sharp enough? I mean, he said, the systems are the systems, but they're just, it's not just today, is it, where they weren't quite at it. It's been sneaking in there, isn't it, where they're not getting into the tackles, they're not winning the balls, the really horrible stuff, and that's where the game was won and lost today for me.
Well, I think the last couple of games have been exactly like it. Today was an example. Fulham was no different. I was at the Morecambe game in the FA Cup. I mean, he played a very strong side. The actual tempo of the game was pretty average. They could have easily won the game by more because if they'd lift the tempo up. So at the moment, they're pretty one-paced. And he said that. He talked about the pace of the game. They just seem really, really flat, which is interesting. When I was at Chelsea, when I first went to Chelsea under Jose Mourinho, the one thing that blew my mind was the intensity of training. And that then transferred to game day. Very rarely did we start a game without very high intensity because you did it every day of the week.
What about the handling of players who are under pressure? I was looking at some of Havertz's stats. So he's got 1 goal in his last 17 appearances, but he's featured now in 9 of the last 10 league games. 4 of those have been starts. Would it be better sometimes if someone is under pressure and he's got this huge price tag hanging over his head, Huth, to take him out the firing line for a few weeks? It's worked for other players at other clubs. Maybe, just maybe, Frank Lampard needs to approach it differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to judge them from the outside. Some people like the stick, some people like... You don't know what they say to each other. They might have had a chat and Havertz just said, listen, I just need more game time. That's what Frank has based his sort of selection on. But, yeah, you just wonder how tough that changing room is, how many honest conversations they have in meeting rooms. Because, like I said, it's been 6-7 weeks now where they've been performing like that, and once you let that sort of go, it becomes a sort of horrible thing where it just goes for the team where everyone was trying to cut corners, and yeah, that's how bad performances happen. But in terms of taking out a fire line, who would you put in?
But they've got so many attacking players, Huth. That's the conundrum for Frank Lampard. I mean, even Mark's saying it. They're getting in each other's ways at times.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've got the options. I honestly do. I think with Havertz, we're halfway at the midway point of the season. I know Havertz missed a few games because of having COVID, but he hasn't actually performed at all this season. In any of the games, you wouldn't come out of it and say Havertz was brilliant today. That's why they spent 80-odd million pounds on him. He's really struggled. And I believe it's got to the point now where he's not necessarily going to play himself into form. He needs time out. They need to work him on the training field. And a lot of times when you're in that position, if when I was playing and I went through a rough patch, I would break it down and go back to basics. I would try and do the simple things and do them well. and then slowly build once you got in a bit of a rhythm, once you got into a little bit of form, once you felt a little bit more confidence growing. For me, Kai Havertz just seems like he's stuck in no man's land. He doesn't really quite know where he's supposed to run, what he's supposed to do for the team, how he's going to contribute to the side. Just doesn't seem like they've pulled him aside and gone, right, you know what I want you to do this game? All I want you to do is this. You come out, you play out on the right-hand side, out wide. You either take a touch inside, whip in that early cross, or you take the ball out wide and knock in an early cross, or take him on. You know, keep it really simple. Build on it.
And another player who you could say might need to be taken out the firing line is the other German involved, Huth, which is Timo Werner. He's the only Chelsea player to have featured in every single game this season. So of the 19 they've played, he started 16. Yet he's got 1 goal in his last 15 appearances for club and country, and that was against Morecambe. Well, what isn't clicking for Timo Werner? We've seen him play sometimes through the middle. We've seen him play out wide. He's been shifted around, and there were such high expectations on him.
Yeah, he started well, undoubtedly so. But, you know, we can talk about whether he should play through the middle or on the wing. The fact is he just can't score at the moment. You know, he does get chances, you know. Today he was just offside, another really close call. So he does get in position to score. So it's not like he's not getting the opportunity. It's just, and we see that before, strikers sometimes have those, you know, rotten phases where they can't score. And he clearly is in one of those phases at the moment, but he just needs to get another goal and his confidence builds. I would be more worried if he doesn't get in position of scoring goals.
Yeah, for me, that's exactly right. So for me, I'm less concerned about Timo Werner because his body language, like Huth was saying earlier on about Kai Havertz, his body language is terrible. Timo Werner's body language is not terrible. You can see every time he comes on, he rolls his sleeves up and he's going to give it a proper go. It's not through lack of effort. It's not through lack of commitment. Today he was really unlucky. You know, what was it? He was marginally offside. Last week he came on against Fulham, missed a great opportunity and missed it actually badly. But that's a striker at times. They just got to keep putting themselves in those positions, and that's what he does. He does it every week. He puts himself in that, and I think he'll play himself into form. Kai Havertz, for me, is the big problem. I don't see Kai Havertz currently being able to play himself into form.